This episode of the Multiracialverse Podcast is brought to you by Evitan Couture, a brand born from a powerful vision and a deep connection to heritage. Founded by Shinnecock brothers Jason Tech King and Wayon Moon Smith, Evitan represents resilience and pride. From handmade tie-dye to wellness-focused athletic wear, each piece is crafted with intention and positivity, smudged with sage for good vibes, and delivered to you with love. Join the Evitan family on their journey of empowerment and inspiration. Hit up Moon on Instagram at Evitan_KS. That is native spelled backwards _KS to view product and place an order. Evitan Couture. Feel the spirit of resilience in every stitch.
One day after football practice, I came home and I saw all my immediate family, all my cousins and aunts and uncles and, comadres in the dining room table. And I didn't see my dad, so I thought maybe he had passed away or something and they were trying to break the news. But no, they were having a family meeting to discuss my sexual orientation.
Oh, wow.
Which I'm very glad that I already had 2 years of activism, that I knew a little bit about my sexual identity to be able to explain to them. But it was bad. It was bad for a good 2 years after that. And little by little with my education and my fortunate will to really seek out education, that I was able to, tell them that I was okay, that I wasn't part of the stigma, that I wasn't going to die of AIDS.
Yeah.
And I think at one point I made the mistake of telling them I was still virgin, and they're like, oh, good. That means you can sleep with a female and you're still figuring things out. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
I remember telling my mom, because she said, hey, maybe you should sleep with a female, and who knows, you might like it. And I told her, Mom, you've been through 2 divorces now. Why don't you try dating a female? Maybe you might like it. And she said, no, I know I wouldn't. I'm like, exactly. Same feeling.
Yeah. Welcome to episode 16 of the Multiracialverse Podcast. It's been a minute, and we appreciate you hanging in there and waiting for us as life's on. My name is still Antonio Fernandez, and I am your host. And today we have a truly inspiring guest joining us, Jaime Lopez. Jaime is an award-winning activist, a first-generation Latinx gay male who's not only made waves in the healthcare industry, but is also redefining what it means to represent these identities. With over 18 years of experience in patient care and a history of climbing the ranks, using his representation in corporate America as a beacon for other youth in BIPOC and underserved communities to follow. Jaime's story is one of resilience, passion, and a deep commitment to serving his community. In this episode, Jaime shares his journey from his roots in San Bernardino County to becoming a leader in healthcare administration, all while championing Latinx and LGBTQ plus communities. He opens up about his experiences, the challenges he's faced, and the victories that have shaped him into the powerhouse he is today. Tune in for a conversation full of positivity, wisdom, and inspiration that will leave you feeling empowered and ready to take on challenges of your own. Welcome to the Multiracialverse, Jaime. How you doing today?
Good, thank you. Dealing with this hot weather over here in the Inland Empire, Southern California.
All right on. Like, how hot has it been?
It's been like 109, 108. Today, knock on wood, it's about 92 degrees right now, so not too bad.
Right on. I'm excited to learn more about your inspiring journey. Tell me about your family, where you're from, and where you grew up.
Awesome, thank you. Well, I'm Jaime Lopez. I grew up in East LA here in California, and both of my parents migrated to the U.S., California, in the 70s. This is where they met. My mom had her first child in Mexico with my older brother. So he was just a baby when she came to the U.S. And funny story is, when he was a toddler, my mom and my dad lived in the same apartment complex. and he ran into my dad's room and started calling him father and like, daddy, like, where you been? And he's like, who's
Wow.
this kid? So it was my older brother that chose my dad for my mom.
Oh, wow, wow. So obviously, I mean, just to clarify, this was somebody. Your mom had a child with someone else, and then came and ended up in this apartment building. And your
Right.
brother ran into the apartment of wow, wow. That is really, really
So
interesting.
it gets even more interesting. Before my mom came to the US, she had a telenovela life.
Oh,
She was
wow.
super poor, married a very rich guy. Um, the very rich guy's family put a hit on my mom to, kill her but take my brother away from her. So that's why she escaped Mexico and came to the US for her life and my brother's life.
Wow.
Super soap opera kind of craziness.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah. So with that, I'm just going to ask the I guess the movie type question is when she left, did she have to change her identity and things like that so that she could not be found? Was there still fear that when she came over here, there might be an opportunity for something to happen?
no, I didn't hear none of that.
Yeah.
My mom's oldest sibling was already here in the US. So, she came to stay there for a while until she got on her 2 feet and move into the apartment where she met my dad.
And that was in East Los Angeles.
Yes.
Awesome. And then so is your older brother your only sibling and then you come along or
No, I'm the youngest of my full generation, like,
okay.
second generation Mexican American. So after my brother came two of my sisters and then myself, and coincidentally, we're all 4 years apart.
Oh
So my
wow. Okay.
brother's 12 years older than I am, then my older sister's 8, then the other sister 4, and then it's me.
Wow. Wow. And so you were born in East Los Angeles and obviously it sounds like you grew up there and what does that mean by growing up there? Like how long were you there?
In East LA I was born in East LA at age 16. My mom divorced my dad and bought a house in Linwood, just southern, LA area, closer to Long Beach, California. And, then I lived there for a couple of more years until it got too expensive to live there on my own. So I ended up le- leaving LA and coming to the Inland Empire, Riverside area, and now in the Lake Arrowhead area.
Oh, right on. That's awesome. What was your childhood like growing up? Like what was East LA like back in what was it, the 80s?
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, it it's better now from what I've heard, but back in my childhood, there was a lot of gangs. My older brother was, affiliated with the popular East LA gangs, and I just heard that I wasn't supposed to amount to anything. Probably get somebody pregnant at 15 years old or something, as my brother did, and it was from what I hear, right? Because I don't remember too much of that. That I probably should have, been dead by now if I were to follow in the footsteps as other people my age in East LA followed.
And what were your parents doing for work? And was it a matter of, sometimes you hear, especially immigrants talking to their children about education is so important and that is, like a driver for them to say, hey, this is a way for you to get out of
Right.
what we had to go through. What were your parents' lives like when they came over here, and how was that dynamic of of them talking to you and your siblings about education growing up?
Good question. The education conversation came a little more from my older sister. She's 8 years older, so she always kind of watched over me while my parents worked a lot. My dad had started working like at um, a company that did fruit baskets actually.
Mm.
And he worked a factory worker. And then my mom tried factory work as well, but it was so hard, with the business hours to have children. So she started selling tamales. She was a tamale lady at a gas station, sold tamales in the morning, got her money, and then was able to spend time with us. And later on, she became a caregiver once we got older, started going to school, and she's a caregiver to this day. My dad retired early. He got hurt at work, and then would do side jobs here and there just to kind of make ends meet.
Yeah.
But yeah, he retired early, like around 55, and still lives in East LA to this day.
So, what was the culture of your family like? You mentioned your parents both coming from different areas in Mexico. Did they bring with them traditions that they passed on down to you and your siblings to carry on? And if they did, what were they? Around religion and around just other things. Did you speak Spanish in the household, or was there a big impact that at one point, maybe with the second generation kids, that your parents were like, "Oh, wait a second, we need to consider assimilating our kids into this culture"?
Right. Also, good question. I think the food is the biggest cultural thing that they brought over. My mom made everything from scratch and, even would cater her tamales and stuff like that. I think my dad was a little too busy to bring any type of culture, except for the machismo of, a man is the head of the household, needs to work from sun up to sundown, stuff like that, where the relationship of a father was less with the children and more with the providing. And so I think that's kind of what he brought in. My mom also that worked a lot, but she brought in the traditions of the parties of, the big Christmases and, saving up for money so she can throw us some birthday parties, stuff like that, where it was just always about a celebration. So I think that's the biggest culture. I think a lot of other cultural stuff was left in Mexico, like the huge family that my mom grew up, because it was just her and her older sister here. And then it was just also my dad and his sister. So that big family cultural, family get-togethers kind of stayed in Mexico.
Did your parents socially? You just mentioned parties, but that transition from that, those big celebrations with lots of people, a family that includes not only blood, but, everybody else within a town or other, within the close areas, family. Like, how do you feel like that impacted your parents? Do you recall, like, maybe as a teen, did your parents, did they socialize, or did they, one or the other, build community where you were at?
Right. I think that's really what shaped who I am now.
Yeah.
My mom was such a community person. My dad in his way as well. He always had trucks. So he was the first person to help people move or, to help people with that. And my mom, she volunteered at a food bank, and she was also very heavily involved in my school, in my sibling school. So they just became part of the community very fast.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what maybe did bring in that culture of community and chosen family, which I still hold dear now, with my chosen family. So I think now that I think about it, yeah, that both of my parents were, extroverts, just doing whatever they can to help out in the community, to stand out and to be of help, to be of service.
Yeah, yeah. I guess, they have to have some of that personality being extroverted to come to a new country and try to forge a life. Because if you were introverted, you're not going to, it's going to be definitely much tougher. You're going to probably more likely rely or depend on somebody. Did your parents talk about what was the societal, like what was going on in society? Did they feel like as immigrants, did they feel accepted? I know that there is some, I've talked to individuals on the show about being fortunate enough to land in a place like East Los Angeles where there's a large Latinx, Hispanic population. How did your parents feel that, like, politically and socially, things were going for them? Did they talk about any, times where, people were like, go back to your country or other things like that?
No, actually, I think that was a huge reason why people migrate to places like East LA, where it's 99.9% Latino, where it's 99.9% Spanish speaking. And, I think there was other hardships. It was kind of more like the financial hardships that they faced crossing over to a new place where they had to, start from the bottom and climb up. But I think that's really what helped them be, accepted very, easily into a community full of immigrants already, and where they were embraced in that way, where church was a huge, reason to feel included and, participate in. So I think they kind of lucked out in a way in that.
Yeah.
Where my mom landed first in Chino Hills, and at that time, was not so, Latinx based, where there was kind of those things where, like, you shouldn't go here, you shouldn't go over there because of La Migra, because, immigration will pick you up. But it was kind of more like a warning versus go back to your country,
Oh, right on.
Yeah.
And what do you remember from your childhood or about you and your sisters navigating, this line between, the culture of your parents and the American culture where, it impacts hard, man, especially when you're a kid.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think because I'm the youngest, I did grow up very sheltered, because my brother, being, a gangster, lived in his own world. And then my sister, seeing that those issues, what, it meant for my parents having a child involving gangs, then it was almost like I was more invested in, with, you need to, be better, don't get into gangs, where, I kind of easily fallen into, that way because it was there.
Yeah.
But I think because I was the youngest, I was very sheltered, removed from that kind of, from that kind of activity, I would say. And also maybe my parents knew a little bit better understanding of raising, a child that came from Mexico, and then had my sisters, and then, by the time I came, they already had a little bit of more practice, I would say.
Do you feel that, I mean, obviously it sounds like your brother found this path with gangs. Did your parents treat the American born children differently besides the fact that your brother, went the path of being in a gang, like, for other things, do you feel like there was a difference in the way your parents treated the children?
Yes, I would say it's more because my father wasn't my older sibling's father.
Okay, yeah, that
Because
makes
I do
sense.
hear that was such a big issue and why my brother seeked community elsewhere. That brotherhood of a gang, that family, that love that they offer, that he didn't get from my father.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So in school, how did you feel about your school experience? Was it once again made maybe a little bit easier because you were in a place where you saw a lot of representation from individuals who look like you, regardless of, if they're from Central, South America or Mexico? Did you speak Spanish in school, or was it, is it, because I know sometimes there were schools in areas that, they had Spanish programs. So.
Right. So when I started elementary school in East LA, I was able to take classes in Spanish, but I think it was in the third grade because I remember passing out flyers for this proposition to keep Spanish in schools. Unfortunately, it didn't pass, and they removed Spanish speaking from classes. And because I was such a young age, my parents taught me Spanish, but because of the community, I learned English right away, even from Sunday school, the English ABCs and all this stuff that I was able to adapt very quickly. Yeah. But I did start elementary school speaking Spanish with Spanish teachers. And then it soon became a transition of we're not allowed to teach in Spanish anymore. So, we're going to teach in English. And then unfortunately, from what I heard, and my sister was a victim, I would say, of this, that the Spanish speaking children who didn't transition well to English were put in special ed and these lower classes because they needed to catch up in language, not on all the other skills.
Yeah. And it sounds like your parents then, valued the idea of making sure that you retained the Spanish language. Did they do that for your siblings as well? So all of you are bilingual?
I don't think it was a choice. It was, they were primarily Spanish speaking, trying to learn a new language. Yeah. So I remember growing up being their interpreter, right? Yeah. Probably an 8-year-old interpreting at a bank setting or a community member that didn't speak Spanish. Yeah. So, it wasn't a choice for them. It was, I have to teach you Spanish because that's what I know. And then we're kind of the ones teaching them English. Yeah. And my mom did attend a couple of courses in the community school, where they taught English, and she learned to, read and write it better and stuff like that.
Oh, that's awesome. That's really cool.
My dad was a little too stubborn and had us to kind of interpret. Yeah. So he was too sheltered in that sense, where he spoke the English that he had to for work and, to communicate, but that was all he wanted to do.
Yeah. What was the sentiment toward like the United States at the time of your parents? Was it one of where, maybe things were happening with the government and they didn't agree with them, but like their primary focus was creating a better life for you? Or did you hear that at all as a teen or a child, them talking about like kind of like the climate of the country while you were growing up?
Yeah, I think my mom's been more open about that, where the president at the time, I can't think of his name right now.
Was it Reagan or was it George Bush Jr.?
No, I think it was Reagan, because they opened up that's how my mom became a U.S. citizen, because they gave all these permissions out. And because she was working here and learned the language and stuff like that, it was easier to become a U.S. citizen than it is now.
Yeah.
But I think it was kind of more, again, just a community that we're in, where they try to help each other out and finding the resources, and then having their children be born here in the U.S. that made it a little easier to get their citizenship at the time.
Yeah. And so you, as you're growing up, you find a path as a teenager, it sounds like, in activism. And I wanted to talk about a couple of things. What type of activism was it? And also, where do you feel like which parent or did both parents nurture like that activist spirit in you?
Right. Well, I guess because both of my parents were such so involved in the community.
Yeah.
But it was my older sister that started being an activist for a Latinx community resource center. And because my mom was always working at the time, she was already a caregiver. She would include me in all of the stuff. And I remember the first activist group that we were part of was East Los Angeles Youth Leadership Council, where, we painted over graffiti, we made murals on the walls, we would set up the community meetings for the mayor, and all these little opportunities that they allowed youth to basically be so busy that they weren't gonna join gangs.
Yeah.
Or they had so many different events that we weren't gonna fall into anything bad.
Yeah.
From that, she found Bienvenidos, that at the time was more family-based, and gave resources and tried to minimize teenage pregnancy. And, I was there learning about all these things at such a young age. She was a teenager doing this, then I was, in elementary school.
Yeah.
So it wasn't until through those programs that I found Bienestar, that was a Latino organization for gay men. And I wasn't even a man. I was 14 when I found out about them, because they collaborated with other Latinx community agencies like Bienvenidos, that I was able to this checks two of my boxes, Latinx and a gay man.
Yeah.
That led to the great stuff that I did. And it was that community, the Latinx and gay community, that gave me my award-winning status.
Oh, that's awesome.
For my activism.
That's great. And we'll get into that in just a minute. As far as you announcing to your folks, hey, I'm gay, or coming out, as we call it, when did that happen for you, and what was that like?
You know what? I'm laughing because it's such an interesting story, and it has to do with my activism, right? Trying to do something good. So my sister at the time, she saw that I was very involved, and that, so Bienvenidos was right across the street from Bienestar. So she's like, hey, my brother's so involved over there across the street. What is that? I want to see what he's doing. So went in there and was like, hey, my little brother volunteers here. What do you guys do? And they're like, well, this is, for gay men. And she's like, what? My 14-year-old brother goes here. So then went to go tell my mom and my brother. They went to go investigate the organization. And by that time, the organization was like, whoa, we don't feel comfortable, releasing anything else. So one day, I was already active for 2 years. So I was 16 when my sister found out. that
Yeah.
I was doing activist work for a gay organization. And one day after football practice, I came home and I saw all my immediate family, all my cousins and aunts and uncles and, comadres in the dining room table. And I didn't see my dad, so I thought maybe he had passed away or something and they were trying to break the news. But
Mm.
no, they were having a family meeting to discuss my sexual orientation,
Oh,
which
wow.
I'm very glad that I already had 2 years of activism, that I knew a little bit about my sexual identity to be able to explain to them. But
Yeah.
it was bad. It was bad for a good 2 years after that. And little by little with my education and my fortunate will to really seek out education, that I was able to, tell them that I was okay, that I wasn't part of the stigma, that I wasn't going to die of AIDS.
Yeah.
And I think at one point I made the mistake of telling them I was still virgin. And they're like,
Mm.
oh, good. That means you can sleep with a female and you're still figuring things out. I'm like, no. I
Yeah.
remember telling my mom because she said, hey, maybe you should sleep with a female. And who
Mm.
knows, you might like it. And I told her,
Yeah.
Mom, you've been through 2 divorces now. Why don't you try dating a female? Maybe you might like it. And she said, no, I know I wouldn't. I'm like,
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
Same feeling.
Yeah.
I just knew already that it wasn't for me.
Yeah. So how long did you know? Like, and how did you have to navigate that as a youth?
You know, I think it was different for me. And this is part of my activism that I spread, that I wasn't your stereotypical gay teenager, that, I still considered myself feminine, but according to social standards, I was into sports. I got tall and, I was socially accepted. My mom worked so hard to give us what we wanted, that, I was popular in school because I had the nice clothes. I had the
Mm.
resources, had an allowance, um, that I was the accepted gay, because of all of that. So I didn't really understand what was going on. I
Yeah.
mean, I was bullied here and there, not so much because maybe they thought I was gay, but just because being gay was a negative thing. So
Mm.
they threw it here and there. So I didn't understand that either. It
Yeah.
wasn't until I would say high school where I would I got away from being shy, um, and started really paying attention to, like, oh man, there's this guy and I'm having weird thoughts about it.
Yeah.
Or when my friends were starting to date girls and I knew that I didn't want to. So it
Mm.
started like in junior high to really accept myself.
Yeah.
But when I talk to my mom now and my siblings, they're like, yeah, we always knew you were. But, it was just, they had excuses for it, right? Like,
Sure.
the men were always out of the house. So I technically I grew with just females.
Yeah.
And that was the reason, right? I fell
Yeah.
into performing arts also. So
Mm.
that was another reason why, I was the way that I was. It wasn't like the last resort of actually being gay. Um, and then I grew tall really quick. So then I started doing, all this other, performing arts with fashion and walking in some runways. So I was like, oh, he's just likes to dress nice. He's not gay, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
He just has a lot of friends that are girls, but he's not gay.
Yeah.
Until finally, when I started doing my activism at 14, where I found out, hey, there isn't nothing wrong with me. This is the feelings that I'm feeling, that I started really accepting myself for who I am. And it was like, it was awesome. Then I was able
Mm.
to speak my story of, I'm not your traditional stereotype, that, that I used my activism in a way to deal with my sexuality. that I was on an activism for the gay community before I even came out to myself or to my family.
Yeah.
So it's such an interesting story of, I think I've always wanted to break those stereotypes first with the Latinx community and then with the gay community, that really helped build, that difference of where I didn't have things to relate to in the media because I wasn't, as flamboyant as others might. Or I didn't relate to, wanting to be a female like what I saw on TV. So I had to become my own example and then be that example for others. And I think that's kind of what helped me be as successful in my activism that I was able to pave the way for myself and then for others.
And so what advice would you give maybe your pre-coming out self or others who might be in a similar position now? And in kind of even societally right now, it's even who knows what path we're going down right now as far as, what will happen. But, the idea of also being Latinx, Hispanic,
Right.
What advice would you give to someone in your position of maybe, hey, I know that I am gay. Where would you say, hey, go check out these places, or this is, you might try to do this. And it's a way to start to build community, especially if you might be surrounded by individuals such as your family who might not accept you right away.
Right. Very good question. I've always heard growing up that, you come out to your family. I didn't really have that experience because they kind of found out and I was kind of outed. But the first thing that I would say is to make sure you're safe, because the reason why my dad was in there when they had the family meeting, because they didn't think he'd take it well. They think he'd probably want to beat me up, get other people to beat me up, stuff like that. They thought the worst case scenario. It turned out that wasn't the case, but I've heard of, fellow friends that their parents tried to, toughen them up, bully them, it became physical for some of them. So I would say that, first come out to yourself, work on that before you're even ready to tell your loved ones, because you really don't know how it's gonna, what's gonna happen. I mean, I've heard of scenarios where the person had a great relationship with their parents, totally didn't see it coming that they were gonna take it in a bad way, that became religious out of nowhere, or, stop talking to them out of nowhere. So first I would say, to make sure it's safe, not just physically, but emotionally. And then start the process. I think one huge resource right now is online, right? So many open celebrities, so many, open public figures that have paved the way. And I also think that there's an organization like PFLAG where my mom ended up communicating to see how parents deal with their gay children, and then became such an activist herself, passing out flyers. Hey, you think your child's gay? Here's a pamphlet.
That's so
And
awesome.
I think it's just that, like, it doesn't
Yeah.
stop with your coming out story. There's always somebody that you can influence, and then just share your story. Even now, it was so scary at that time, standing up to my family as the youngest of my whole generation. I look back at it and I'm like, man, I didn't realize how strong I was at that time, right? And how I can stand my ground and be like, this is who I am. Like, I didn't plan it. This is just how, I was born. And that's another thing that I say is don't try to change anybody's opinion, because I think that's when it starts getting dangerous, or you start losing people. My brother to this day thinks it's a choice, but the reason why I don't try to change his mind is because I do have that respect and I do have that relationship with him. And as long as you're being respected and as long as you're not in danger, that's all I ask for. I mean, I don't ask for you to believe what I believe. I feel that that's the beautiful thing that I can, that I promote is individuality.
That's amazing.
And
I love that.
Your differences.
Wow. Yeah.
But as long as you respect me and you want to be part of my life, then you can believe what you want, but we're going to have that mutual respect.
Yeah. Thank you. And thank you for, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. And I think that's the first thing that you hit a wall when you're trying to change somebody's beliefs, you know, and just like religion or political views, those beliefs come from somewhere. Mm-hmm. So share your story. And I share my story that, you know, this is who I feel like I've been from the beginning, that I feel that I was born this way and I'm glad I am and I'm proud. But if somebody doesn't believe that, that's their story. That's their journey. I'm here if they want to hear me out and if they want my resources. But if not, as long as we have that mutual respect, then that's all that really matters.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. That was beautiful. Thank you so much. It's a great way to carry oneself and try to keep that in mind, which it's really tough once you get somebody trying to change your mind. So you use your experience to be an activist. What award? When you call yourself award-winning, tell us a little bit about the awards you won.
Wow, there's way too many to list or to remember. But some of the great stuff was, you know, through the community and agent of change. So one of the biggest things that I was able to do was with Teen Line. It's 1-800-Teen Line, where teenagers are facing all these issues. But when they go to a therapist, they get put with like a 50 or 60-year-old person, and a teenager will not relate to somebody at that age. Teenagers already think that nothing's going to happen to them. They think that the world is against them. So I went through a program as a peer health educator, which is one of my awards, of teenagers listening to other teenagers about their issues. And I was used a lot for the LGBTQ plus issues, right? Of teenagers going through their hormones and being bullied and trying to accept themselves. And I used my story to bridge that gap between, hey, you can believe what you want, but you're going to respect me, and I don't deserve to be beaten up at school, or I don't deserve to be kicked out of my house for being gay. And I would go everywhere. I would go to churches. I would go to community centers, to high schools. I think I did 1 or 2 middle schools. But just speaking about my story, I would get emails from LGBTQ plus students that like, hey, the bully that bullied me was in the room when you talked about your story, when you talked about demanding respect and demanding humanity. And you know what? The bullying stopped. And it was those examples that I was able to take to Teen Line, MediaNet, Bienestar Health Services, Ultimate Health Services, that then I would start doing activist work for them, would get awards, featured in MTV. Actually was the biggest thing I did with my activism on LGBTQ issues and growing up gay and stuff like that, where these organizations gave me awards for going so extreme in the media with my story and, you know, planting these seeds of acceptance, of diversity, of inclusion. And before it was a EID initiative of, you know, equity, inclusion, and diversity. And I think the one that I remember the most that sticks to my mind is an agent of change, which is at that time, I didn't even realize that's what I was doing. I was changing a perspective. I was changing the way people looked at it. Again, I wasn't changing somebody's beliefs, or values. I was just, asking for that respect and, and being more positive. I think that was another thing. When I grew up, being gay was so negative, the slurs and stuff like that. Even if you weren't gay yourself, you still carried that as a negativity.
Yeah.
And I have a funny example. When I was in high school, they would use "that's so gay" a lot, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was one thing that I used as an icebreaker. I'm like, I keep hearing all these things like, "Oh, that's so gay. Your backpack is so gay." I'm like, how can a backpack be gay? Does it have sex with other backpacks? And people would laugh, but it was through that humor and through that education that they're like, oh yeah, that's just as negative as saying the N-word or calling a religious person a slur or something. So then they started connecting those dots of, hey, maybe I shouldn't say this because I might be hurting somebody, a whole culture, in fact. And I didn't really realize that I was being that agent of change until I got that award. And I was like, oh man, here I am, is just being myself. I'm trying to break those barriers and break those stereotypes. And in doing so, I was able to make a difference.
Yeah. Congratulations on all those awards and for doing all that work. It's amazing.
Thank you. Thank you.
So where do you feel that you, from which parent, or is it from somewhere else where you feel like you were inspired to do the work that you're doing, that you are a driven person as we start to transition now from your activism and your teenage years into, being an adult and going to school and getting into corporate America? Where did that desire and drive come from?
You know what? I think that's a great question, because now that I'm old enough to really soul search and to really look back at what I've been through, it was all that negativity. People telling me, like my community, teachers, family members, my own father, that I wasn't going to amount to anything. Instead of really taking that as a negative and accepting it, I fought. And I said, no, I am going to be an educated Latino. I am going to be, a successful gay man. I am going to be more than just Latinx or gay. I'm gonna, I'm gonna prove you wrong. And I think that was something that I didn't learn from my family, didn't learn from my community. And, I use another example of this popular TV show of, where they featured two gay men, and one of them was super feminine and the other one had a different partner every episode and worried about pleasing their partner. And I just didn't see that in myself.
Yeah.
When I went to the first Gay Straight Alliance at school, the facilitator was this, stereotypical butch lesbian that I didn't relate to. And then when there was a gay male facilitator, his goal in life was to be a house husband. And I just did not relate.
Yeah.
And now looking back, I was like, I didn't see any characters that I wanted to be on TV or in real life. So I had to do it for myself. And I had to get involved in the community to be like, you know what? This is who I am. Was playing sports. I do like, I can like more than one thing. I have different hats, not just the gay card or the Latinx card. I'm also a son. I'm a friend. a boyfriend or, or a single man at the moment. And it was finding out what role model I wanted for myself that coincidentally I became a role model myself. And I think it almost became a crutch where I was addicted to success, where one college degree wasn't enough, so I had 6, where one award wasn't enough, so I filled up a whole wall.
Yeah.
Where now I'm able to stop and be like, well, when is enough enough?
Yeah.
When can I stop being the activist, stop being, a fighter? And unfortunately, the answer is you can't, right?
Yeah.
You learn to live with that. You learn to think that maybe I was put in this life to be an example and to be a fighter, so that maybe the new generation doesn't have to fight so hard. And I see that already. And I think that's what's feeling me now is this new generation. It's like, it's amazing. They're so open-minded.
Yeah.
They're so resilient. And it's kind of like, wow, the world is changing.
Yeah.
And then but you know what happens, right? We take 2 steps forward and then a couple back.
Yeah.
So then that is the reason why we keep fighting.
Yeah.
And although I'm tired and exhausted and I do think about myself and what I want to accomplish in life, I still have that activist mind of what else am I doing with the community? What are the new kids needing now?
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what fuels me now and wanting to continue to be even more resilient.
Yeah.
Having my day job and yay job, right?
Yeah.
Now, I'm a Southern California co-lead for the Latinx Business Resource Group with my healthcare organization. So even now I see myself, one job isn't enough.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of just the person I became because I didn't see the person that I wanted to become when I was younger.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. I love that because I was thinking that exact thing is that you exist, you are this reality of this individual who is dynamic and intelligent and beautiful, and you have these degrees and you do this activism and all these other things. And I think the unfortunate thing is that sometimes society makes our box so small that like there could be so many more individuals who view the world as you do. And I love that you feel that you are also kind of you're this role model, and this new evolution of what a gay Latinx male can be, first generation. And yeah, I think, we're seeing more and more individuals, blossom into those people that they really were meant to be. And yeah, I think, a lot of them, that you've impacted have you to thank for, just, the inspiration that you provided for them. So,
you just reminded me of something.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think I've always fought for being that multicultural person. However, a corporate world, right? And being successful yourself, sometimes you do have to be that token gay, that token Latinx, that, tatted guy that, is making it. And I've had to learn to hone in to that stereotype. And it wasn't until I honed into that superpower that I was able to break the stereotype by becoming the stereotype, which totally goes against my values.
Yeah.
But but when I needed to be, I was the token gay. When I needed to be, I was the Latinx. When I needed to be a friend, I was a friend. When I needed to be a coworker, I was a coworker. When I needed to be an activist, I was an activist. And although I'm everything, I think that's something that I learned, that sometimes you gotta beat the system by being what they want you to be.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's such a weird concept for me, because I fought my whole life to like be an individual and be, you know, multicultural. But sometimes that one stereotype is what makes a difference and makes that connection. By being the Latinx, you know, feeds into other Latinx. By being that one, you know, gay guy in the department helps fuel other, you know, gay people trying to aspire to that. And I think there's power into that. That's something that I've had to really learn to accept.
Yeah.
That sometimes, that individuality can be the way in.
Yeah.
And then that helps you create that change. Right.
Yeah. Yep.
And I think it's funny, because what I hear a lot is like, oh, I hate, you know, fake people, and although I'm authentically myself, I don't know how to not be myself. Sometimes I do have to play that role. I do have to, you know, cover my tattoos and be that, you know, put on my blazer, and sometimes I'm a rebel and take it off and show everybody that, you know, I'm a tatted, successful, you know, Latinx gay person. So it's such a double-edged sword that you reminded me of that sometimes you don't have to break the stereotype. Sometimes being that stereotype helps you feel belonged.
Yeah.
And as long as you take it in a positive way and you do good with it, then I've learned for it to be an okay thing.
Yeah, yeah. And then to build on that, I think it's, you know, for me listening to share that beautiful story and your thoughts on that, I feel it's, you've done a lot of work and been inspired and pushed through a lot of fear and had courage to do those things that many others don't. And as you would say, you get, I guess maybe it's a privilege, but it's kind of like you have passed through the fear and have the courage to be that stereotypical or be that token gay or Latinx person in the room. But by doing that, like you said, and I just wanted to echo this again, is that you did that and you show up to hopefully, you know, help others in the future not have to, you know, fight through all the things that you did. You know what I'm saying? Not to have to go through all those things. Maybe not to not be less courageous, but not to have to go through all the bullshit, basically, right?
Right.
Like,
and I think, you know? I think that's one of my pet peeves, where, you know, the Latinx community, we're supposed to be so humble. We're supposed to, you know, just put our head down and work. And I have a funny example of, I went to the doctor's office. Of course, you know, I'm in the healthcare field, so I know these people. And then, I went to go get my flu shot, and the doctor tells, the nurse, "Hey, do you know that you're standing in the presence of greatness?" And I'm like, are you talking about me? And he's like, "Yeah, I see you doing everything." And I'm like, you know what? You're right. And then, and he almost reminded me not to be humble. And I was like, wow, it was like that opened up my eyes, like, of, you know what? I did work this hard, and And I did get to where I needed to get to, but it's not enough. I'm still working on myself. And, but I think the difference is that I love to create a door for myself and for others to come through. And it's a pet peeve when I see, successful Latinx people, or successful Black people, and they're in, so they close that door.
Yeah.
And they forget about their community, or that, internal homophobia, or, internal racism and stuff like this, where it's like, no, it's not just enough for you to blast through that door. You need to make the way for others.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of where I'm at now, where I can be a mentor because I've had great mentors.
Yeah.
Or I've had great examples, like a resilient mother, that it's like, you know what, it's my turn. Yeah. And it's a huge responsibility, but it can be done.
Yeah.
And I use my education as an example. I always say, if a child from East LA, that, English was their second language, and that their, mom was a tamale lady, and that if I can do it, you can too. School is not hard. It just takes a lot of commitment.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of sacrifice. But, the Latinx population comes from excellence. California alone, we had so many universities before we became the U.S. We had surgeons and doctors and lawyers, and reminding the Latinx community, using statistics, spreading that Latin excellence is one way to keep that door open, to motivate our children, to be successful. Not just a Latinx successful person, but just a successful person in general.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Let's end on this question that I ask everyone. What is your recipe for world peace? And, I think you need to consider making it simple and easy, and something that has that everybody has the ingredients to, so we can make it right away. No, go ahead. What is Jamie's recipe for world peace?
I would say world peace is not easy. But you know what? I think the start is looking within. I've worked so much on myself, not just with my education, but with my spirituality, with changing myself first before I can change the world. Finding that inner peace, being happy, it starts there. If you don't have peace within, you can't spread peace. And I think that's one thing that I've really honed into, is being happy and being peaceful myself, and being enough for myself, so that I can spread that joy and that love and that education other places. But it's not simple, Loving yourself unconditionally is not simple. It's something that my own family struggles with, right? My ex-partners have struggled with. But now that I can truly say that I love myself unconditionally, that I am, unapologetically myself, I can spread peace, and that I can motivate for world peace.
Right on. I saw one other question that I just wanted to throw over the fence to you really quickly, because you touched on a couple of things with your motivation and your passion. What does success mean to you? You have these degrees and these awards, and you're climbing in your work, and you're doing the work internally, and possibly within that work, you're looking at yourself as like, what is my motivation to do this? Is maybe it sounds like there might be a PhD down the line that you're looking at. Is that PhD connected to your success? Is it connected to your kind of perpetual desire to have knowledge? What does success look like to you, and how your relationship to it?
You know what? It took a lot of therapy for me to answer that question, but I'm so glad I did that work because now I can. So I've been successful in so many different areas of my life, and I think adaptability was the biggest tool that I can do. Being in charge of a whole county was a huge task for me. Now I'm in charge of 2 counties. So it's one of those things where you just adapt to where the new chapter is, seeing what success, redefining it. Success to me was, getting my degrees. And it still is, right? I do want a PhD. I want to be Dr. Lopez. That's my educational goal. Right now, on a personal level, is finding the right type of partner. I've found the right person in myself. Now, what does love look like? What does, possibly having children of my own, which I never thought of. Being successful in my own department, which I'm doing now. Maybe being successful in a different healthcare organization than what I am now. Honing into one of my degrees that's not even healthcare, it's business related. So I think what success to me is reshaping where I want to go to next and knowing that I am going to accomplish it. And then if I don't, learning from those mistakes. And I think that's one of the great things about being successful is that you've tasted it. So now you want it and now you can go get it.
Yeah.
And there's no rule book, right? But I think, being successful to me is knowing that whatever comes my way, whatever hurdle, that I will overcome it and that I will eventually be successful at it.
Awesome. And because of your success, you've paved the path for others who listen and others that you come in contact with to know, as you say, this little, first generation boy from East LA, has accomplished many great things, and his success is internal and external. And with that, is there anything that you want to promote, nonprofits that you want to promote and let people know about, or your social media? Give it to us.
I think there's so many different things out there. Like, for example, right now, I didn't think I can do yoga. I mean, I'm tall, I'm like 6'1", and being there, and, I thought my belly was going to get in the way or whatever. And, I tried that and I love it, right? Just trying new things, whether it's a local organization, a national organization like NALE, or a huge organization like Kaiser Permanente. Whatever is out there, try it out, fail, get back up, start your own organization. I never thought that I can, do the things that I can do. I amaze myself all the time. Mm-hmm. Now I'm thinking of, writing an activist book or writing a book about my, my coming out story, or just a motivational thing like that. I'm in the stage where I didn't even know that it's valuable to document stuff. So whether you document your stuff on social media or in a broadcast like this, wherever it's at, get your voice out there, whether it's commenting on somebody's post or standing up for something that you believe in. I think that the resources are endless in this day and age.
Awesome. And did you have socials that you wanted to promote, or no?
I have my my professional Instagram, which is Jaime, Jaime, Lopez _MBA_MHA, where I like to highlight other people's successes, my own, what I'm doing with my healthcare organization, what I'm doing for my community. That's about it. I sometimes don't, hone into so much because I'm out in the community that I forget to capture things. I'm old school where it's kind of like, let me put my phone down and just live in the moment.
Yeah.
But that's something that I'm learning.
Are you working with any nonprofits right now?
Yeah, so I'm working with NALE,
Okay.
the National Healthcare Executives, where I can use my title of a regional project manager at a higher level leadership to inspire other people to, use our resources to really inspire. One of the biggest things I'm doing right now is National Latino Physician Day, where there's a huge crisis in the shortage of Latinx physicians to take care of our Latinx population. The statistics is 6%. And in California, where our Latinx population is almost 40%, you can see that we really need our Latinx community to be physicians so that they can take care of our communities in a cultural acceptance level where, where healthcare is not just a physical, it's also emotional, or it's also cultural, where it's also that acceptance part to be, wellness all around.
Right on.
And those are just little things that I'm working on that have become huge. And that's always the story of my life. Like, I do one little thing and it becomes something so big. But National Latino Physician Day on October 1st, celebrate that. I'm so proud of the Latinx physicians that I work with because they're part of the 6% of the national workforce, which is not enough. Latina physicians are about 2% of the national workforce. So just calling that out. And I think it's one of the biggest messages that I want to shout out today.
Awesome. Jamie, thank you so much for bringing your inspiration and your big heart to the show. And I can't wait to share this with other people. Thank you so much. I appreciate you making time today.
No problem, Antonio. I think, I want to thank you for what you do as well, giving me a platform, a multicultural purpose that I wear on my sleeve. And who knows, we might need a part 2 and we'll tackle something else together because, we only touch on the surface on a lot of things.
Yes.
And I thank you for that.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Gracias. Have a good one too.
You too.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you for joining us for the Multiracialverse Podcast. My name is Antonio Fernandez. You can find this podcast on Apple Podcast and Spotify. Huge shout out to my friend Johannes Skoda for mixing and creating the intro music, and DJ Kazam for the track.